Hello everyone and welcome along to another episode of On the Whistle. It only feels like 5 minutes since Wembley, but Sunland are back. They're back playing football and starting their 2025-2026 campaign, at Hebburn Town against Gateshead and against South Shields yesterday. We're just going to have a chat through the games really, some of the things we learned, some of the things that caught my eye. Now obviously we do this with the major caveat that, pre-season is about fitness. We don't get too kind of hung up on performances and results, particularly not the first game of pre-season, which is very much just about the players sort of feeling their way back into action, topping up their match fitness a little bit at the end of their kind of quite punishing first week of pre-season training. But I thought there was quite a few bits to get into, so we'll do that. We will kind of get back to the Q&A format as we go through pre-season, and I'll be asking a few questions for these episodes. But I thought for this first one, just have a little chat through the game and kind of what we learned from it. So Sunland obviously started, at Hebburn Town against Gateshead, mostly a development squad, a 2-2 draw, a pretty good game, especially the first half where all the goals were scored really, really end to end. Sunland, a blend of sort of young players, both across the under-18s and the under-21s. So there were some players involved who had never actually played any under-21s football. So a really strong opponent for them in terms of, a National League opponent. And they held their own, to be fair. So the Sunland's goals scored by Trey Ogden, who of course you all know about, one of the most exciting talents in the academy, took his goal really well. Have to say he's a talent that I'm really excited about. Gets into good areas, seems to be a real sort of target for his teammates, whether it's crosses into the box, whether it's those little balls into the box. So good to see him on the score sheet, and an excellent goal from Joe Anderson, stepping out from the back and scoring from long range off the inside of the post. I have to say that across that first game, Anderson quite comfortably the best player on the pitch. I think you can see that he is well above that level now, and I think it's now about him getting the right move this summer, whether it be to the League One or the Championship. And that, I guess, was throwing it forward, was kind of the big talking point from this game, really. So while it was mostly development players, as I say, across the under-18 and the under-21s group, there were a handful of players, kind of fringe players, if you like, from the first team squad who were involved. Usually Sabrice confirmed after the South Shields game that all those players who had been involved in that first game, the senior players I should say, are free to leave the club this summer and aren't involved in his plans now or in the future. So that includes Joe Anderson, also includes Jan Poveda, who played the first half at Hebburn, Nazari Rusin, who played the first half at Hebburn, Louis Hamia and Jay Matete, who played the second half. So players that Sunderland have kind of already made that decision on, that their game time is going to be limited. Abdullah Bar as well, who played in the second half, I should add. So we kind of know that there's no kind of way back, if you like, for those players in terms of the season. They're not going to be involved. I have to say credit to all of them really, because their attitude was exemplary and their work rate in terms of how they took on the game, carrying out what the coaching staff were asking them to do. Poveda had Sunderland's best moments in the first half. He had one long-range effort that was brilliantly saved. Nazari Rusin worked really, really hard, combined really well with, played off the left, combined really well with a young left back called Archie Lightfoot, who had a good game. So I think all those players who were involved, to their credit, they look fit, they look ready to try and get themselves a move and kick on with their career. And you've got to give them a shout out for the way they applied themselves. Yesterday, Louis Hamia missed a couple of big chances in the second half, which will be frustrating for him. But he looks in good shape. I have to say, he was moving well. He looked sharper than he did the last time I saw him in pre-season last year. So fingers crossed these guys are getting themselves in a position where they can go and get a decent move. And by playing in these games and getting some match minutes under their belt, I think they're sending exactly the right message to clubs who might want to sign them. So I thought that was a positive, but real clarity from Sabrice after the South Shields game that these players will be moving on this summer. Loads of really positive performances from the youngsters in the team. I think there was a few who, given how young they were and the fact that they were stepping up against in the men's senior football, who I hadn't seen much of, really, really exciting young winger called Charlie Dinsdale, who played the second half, who I really liked the look of, got into good areas, caused some problems. A lot of very, very good technicians that we kind of already know about and that you'll have watched in the under-21s as well. So exciting times and a solid result in terms of those young players starting their season. So moving on to Shields, which obviously the squads weren't split this year because obviously the pitch not being ready at Gateshead meant the game had to be moved to Hebburn, which is where Sunderland sent their kind of more development squad. Yeah, a pretty strong performance, really, as you would expect. It's Sunderland winning 4-0. Though credit to South Shields, at times they showed like good composure on the ball, very comfortable handling the ball. So it was a good workout for Sunderland. They didn't have it all their own way, but certainly the extra quality kind of showed. Goal in the first minute felt just like old times. Enzo Lefebvre threading a pass through to Wilson Isidore, who scored. Romain Mundell scoring a lovely goal on the break, and then Milan Alexic and Ahmed Abdullahi scoring in the second half. And I think it was really interesting. You could see the focus on transition, how Sunderland want to use their pace and the quality of their passing in midfield. Even though this was obviously a team against sort of much lower league opposition, I think you can see that's the template that Sunderland are going to kind of play next season. And I think that you can see in their recruitment that that's what they're trying to do. A few things that I want to shout out was absolutely fantastic to see Nile Huggin back on the pitch. And he was still looking really, really quick. Anyone there will have noticed it. Really interesting sort of little passage of play early in the game where someone played out for the back and South Shields triggered a really, really aggressive press. Ball came into Huggins and he had, I think, 3 South Shields players on him, and he just spun it, played this brilliant through ball through to Enzo Lefebvre, who tried to dink the goalkeeper but just left it a little bit too late, and the goalkeeper was able to make the block. Now, a really, really good positive step forward for Huggins. There were 1 or 2 errors in his game, which you would expect because he's been so long out. But yeah, great to see that he's clearly fully fit, training, hasn't lost any of his pace during that long period out with injury, and given what he's been through, just fantastic to see him playing his football. What the future holds, we've got no idea. But at the moment, with Dennis Serkin injured, with Reynildo not linking up with the team, Huggins has got a little bit of an opportunity to prove himself and put himself in Régis Lebris's thoughts, and he's made a good start on that. But kind of regardless, that's not really what it's about. I think just fantastic to see him back playing, and spoke to him after the game. Really, really nice, down-to-earth guy, and saying how he's kind of been coming into this game, putting a lot of pressure on himself to perform and show what he's all about, and having to sort of almost reset on the day of the game and say, actually, this is what he's worked so hard for, and to just go out there and enjoy it. And fantastic that he was able to do that. And hopefully this is the start of another strong comeback, because I think it's easy to forget that before he got his last injury, obviously against Coventry City, in that first half of the season, I think many of us would have had him in discussion to have been Sunderland's best player. So we know the level he can reach. We know he can come back from these serious injuries. We'll wait and see, but fingers crossed that this is the start of that. In terms of Sunderland's performance more generally, I thought that it was kind of what you would expect in terms of the big players were very, very good. Eliza Mienda was really hard for South Shields to trouble in the second half. As I mentioned, excellent assist from Enzo Lefebvre. Dan Ballard coasted through the game, really, in terms of defensively. He was just far too good and far too strong for the opposition. One player I really wanted to shout out was Ahmed Abdullahi, who played the second half, scored his goal at the end. Excellent. Really, really enjoyed watching him play. He's a big player, really physical, really strong, really finds it really easy to hold defenders off and bring the ball down and bring others into play. Got a little bit of pace about him as well, and a really powerful shot. Will Abdullahi be involved in the Premier League season? I've got no idea. It's far too early to say that. It might be that later in pre-season, it doesn't look like he's got a lot of game time, so someone looks for a loan. Too early to sort of make a decision on that, but I just wanted to flag up that he looks like someone to have found another really, really talented player, really good physical profile, a little bit of quality about him and composure. Thought he linked up really nicely with Mienda. And so that was something that was really encouraging to see, because of course last season, Sunderland signed him. He obviously had this groin issue, which the club knew about, but they felt that if they could get to the bottom of that and get it sorted, they were signing a really, really top prospect. And certainly the evidence of yesterday convinced me that there is a real talent there. So that was something that I was really excited to see. And if anyone wasn't at South Shields, I wanted to flag that up, because I think that's one to watch in the next few weeks, because as Sunderland get their squad together, there will be opportunities, I imagine, in Portugal next week. I'll be really interested to see how Abdullahi gets on. If I had to pick out one player, I think who probably impressed me the most, probably Patrick Roberts. Looked really sharp. Of course, South Shields, all kinds of problems cutting in from the right flank. Lovely assist from Milan Alexic, who looked powerful, got into good areas, so fair play to him as well. He's obviously in good shape heading into pre-season. Yeah, really strong performance. Really enjoyable debut from Habib Diara. I think you can see straight away that he has a little bit of quality in terms of his pass for Romain Mundell's goal, an excellent assist. But also what was really interesting was that he actually sort of played a big part in creating that counter-attack, because Sunderland had actually lost the ball in their own defensive third. And South Shields thought they had an opportunity, but then Diara and Mundell combined to steal the ball, break away in an excellent pass from Diara. looks like a real athlete. He played in sort of the holding midfield role yesterday. I think we'll probably, as I discussed on my video when Sunland signed Diara, I imagine he'll probably play a little bit further forward in time. But yeah, played as a holding midfielder, but what was clear was how much grass he can cover very, very easily. Jumping up to press the opposition a lot, making strong recovery runs. He's a real athlete. He's going to get about the pitch a lot. He's going to be a huge asset for Sunderland out of possession in terms of the pressing he can do, the ground that he can cover. As I say, that passing one will show he's got a bit of quality. Now, of course, you would expect a player of that ilk to stand out in a game like this, but even so, an encouraging start for him, and it'd be good to see the new signings, sort of the other new signings coming into action in the next few weeks. So, a few little bits and bobs just in terms of like wrapping up. So Chris Rigg wasn't involved yesterday. He was the only sort of new injury. We knew, of course, that Rigg had been ruled out of the European Championships, the under-19s European Championships with an ankle problem. Thankfully, the news is really positive, to be honest. Rigg was there yesterday. He is fully recovered. It's just that he wasn't able to start training at the same time as his teammates because of that ankle problem. So Sunderland just decided that Saturday was a little bit early for him, but he's expected to join full training next week in Portugal. So I imagine we should see him getting a little bit of game time, obviously on that trip and the games next weekend. So yeah, pretty good news all in all. Yeah, nothing to worry about there, and Rigg will be joining the action pretty shortly. The one thing that you would have to say kind of moving forward is that obviously we got the news on Friday that Luke O'Nien, Dennis Serkin, Adri Elise and Leo Hjelde have all been ruled out of the first 3 games of the Premier League season. And you could see yesterday that defence is definitely an area where Sunderland are stretched at the moment. They have some talented young players, they have players who can fill in those positions, but there's clearly an issue with depth given all of those injuries. Ray Nildor will of course come into the picture, but I think it's pretty clear that's a big focus for Sunderland now. I think we'd all agree it's been a really strong start to the transfer window, but there's definitely some work to do in getting those defensive options strengthened. I asked Fabrice about that game and he gave me a one-word response. Yes, as in we do need to sign some defenders. A short and obvious answer was his kind of message. So that was definitely something that really came through yesterday. And I think we know that Sunderland are clearly looking to strengthen their goalkeeping ranks as well. But I think defenders, that's going to be a big focus in terms of what's coming forward. Sunderland definitely need at least one centre-half with that Luke O'Nien news. So I think that's definitely something to watch moving forward. Fabrice kind of set out the template for how things are going to move forward. So he told the players who were involved, obviously, in the South Shields game, that's obviously his main group that he's working with at the moment. He's basically told them that the first 2 weeks of pre-season is about looking at them, giving them an opportunity, a chance to build their fitness. I don't think any significant decisions are going to be made on players' futures who are in that group at the moment until after the Portugal trip. That's a pretty clear message. So there's obviously a lot of players in that category of we're trying to work out whether they're going to be part of this squad. They may be weighing up other options. A classic example of that would be Nectar Triantis, who Hibs are really keen to bring back. He does have interest from other clubs as well, but he's quite keen to see if he's got a role to play at Sunderland. Fabrice is assessing his progress because obviously he's been away on loan for a year. There's a lot of players in that category, and Fabrice's message has been very much, let's have the first 2 weeks of pre-season, let's train, let's have some game time, and then he's going to make decisions on whether those players are likely to be involved with the Premier League squad or not after that first 2 week period, so probably after the trip to Portugal. And he made really clear that he'd make early decisions. We've seen so far already that Sunderland have been really decisive in terms of their incomings, and it's clearly going to be the same in terms of their outgoings as well. So there'll be a lot of players in that category. Triantis is an obvious one. Even players like I mentioned, Abdullahi, Nile Huggin, Jensen Seal, where Sunderland will be making decisions fairly early in terms of whether they think they've got a realistic chance of getting in the kind of squad for the Premier League next season, or whether it's about them going out and finding some game time. Now, within that, it might be that some players impress and Sunderland opt to keep them around for a little longer and then make a decision. I think Abdullahi is an obvious one where Sunderland don't know a huge amount about him in their own sort of environment because obviously he's been absent from training for so long. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how that develops. So keep an eye out, loads of transfer, injury, analysis, all sorts. Will be more on the whistles next week from Portugal after the 2 games there. I'm sure we'll have a podcast this week as well on the YouTube channel. So just, keep your eyes out. We'll have plenty of content coming. And as ever, thank you so much for watching.